Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and the members of the listening public. I welcome the officials from the Ministry of Education. My name is Bridget Anizet George, and I am the chairman of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee. The Committee on Public Administration and Appropriations, PAAC, has the mandate to consider and report to the House on A, the budgetary expenditure of government agencies to ensure that expenditures are embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval. B, the budgetary expenditure of government agencies as it occurs and keeps Parliament informed of how the budget allocation is being implemented. And C, the administration of government agencies to determine hindrances to their efficiency and to make recommendations to the government for improvement of public administration. The purpose of this meeting is to conduct an examination of the Ministry of Education draft estimates of recurrent expenditure on subhead 04, current transfers and subsidies, and draft estimates of development program, Consolidated Fund, and Infrastructure Development Fund for the financial years 2024 and 2025. The role of the committee is to assist the stakeholders in achieving the efficient delivery of services while ensuring that expenditure is embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval, to determine the challenges faced and possible solutions to these challenges, and to make recommendations for improvement of public administration. This meeting is being held in public and is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can send their comments related to today's topic via email parl101@ttparliament.org, Facebook @TTParliament, and X @TTParliament. I therefore at this stage would like to invite the members of the committee to introduce themselves, and I start on my extreme right.
Good afternoon, members. I am Randall Mitchell, member.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lawrence Hislop, member.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sharda Patisa, member.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hassel Bacchus, member.
Thank you. And I'll now invite the members who are here from the Ministry of Education to introduce themselves, starting with the Permanent Secretary.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. My name is Simone Williams, and I'm the Acting PS at the Ministry of Education. I will now ask my team to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. I'm Sheldon Henry, Project Manager at the Ministry of Education.
Good afternoon. I'm Bhagwati Manik, Director of Finance and Accounts.
Good afternoon. Lisa Henry David, Director, Educational Planning.
Good afternoon. I am Wayne Cooper, the Director of Education, Planning and Facilities Procurement Unit.
Good afternoon. I am Primiti Gachida, Acting Senior Human Resource Advisor, Scholarships and Advanced Training Division.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mr. Ronald McLeod, Quantity Surveillance Assistant 3.
Good afternoon. I'm Alton Webb, Director ICT.
Good afternoon. I'm Greg Cave, Accounting Executive 1, Acting.
Good afternoon. I'm Alana Henry, Director of Finance and Accounts, Acting.
Good afternoon. I'm Anjani Samaru, Auditor 3.
Thank you very much. And therefore, Madam PS, I'll invite you to make a brief opening statement if you so wish.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The Ministry of Education's team is pleased to be invited here today in response to the examination of expenditure under subheads 04, current transfers and subsidies, 09, development program, consolidated fund, and infrastructure development fund. In fiscal 2025, the Ministry of Education was allocated a total sum of $5.734 billion, which represents a 6.7% decrease over the last fiscal. Execution of works under the votes related to current transfers and subsidies is critical to the day-to-day operations of the ministry and its agencies. Funds under this item are used largely to benefit our chief stakeholders, the children of the nation. In this regard, the ministry continues to put structures in place to ensure that allocations are efficiently and effectively dispersed and that funds allocated under the votes identified are accurately utilized. With respect to the development program, in fiscal 2025, the ministry received a total of $264 billion. Funds will be utilized on programs in respect of technical, vocational, and tertiary education students, support for students through the provision of laptops and technological advances in education, as well as scholarships, bursaries, and grants to facilitate our students in need. Under the Infrastructure Development Fund, funds in the sum of $192 billion were allocated in fiscal 2025. These funds will continue to be spent on meeting the infrastructure needs of our early childhood care and education, primary, secondary, and special needs students, as well as the staff of the ministry and visitors to its various offices. It should be noted that in fiscal 2024, 586 projects at schools were completed at a cost of $99.2 million, with uninvoiced commitments of $176.7 million. The ministry continues to implement checks and balances to ensure that allocations are efficiently and effectively disbursed and are mainly effected through the processes and procedures related to the disbursement of funds in accordance with the Exchequer and Audit Act, as well as systems, policies, and procedures employed by the Ministry of Education. In relation to the technical, vocational, tertiary, and other institutions, the internal processes and procedures come into play. Guidance is taken from the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual in respect of ensuring compliance from these state agencies. The Executive of the Ministry of Education takes its responsibility to safeguard the public purse seriously, and we work with the relevant staff and stakeholders to ensure that the mandate of the ministry is achieved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam PS. And I took note in your opening statement with respect to your role in ensuring that allocations are efficiently and effectively disbursed, and also ensuring that the utilization is proper. And I wanted to inquire what challenges, if any, that you may face at the ministry in fulfilling your role in oversight and managing educational institutions. And I'll put it in the context of under a lot of the sub-items, when we ask the question, how does the Permanent Secretary oversee and account for the allocation of the funds disbursed to educational institutions under 006 or to state enterprises? There was a consistent response that the funds are allocated in accordance with the relevant cabinet minute. So that appears to us with respect to how you disburse it.
Mm-hmm.
We really were interested to see what sort of oversight you exercise, having disbursed it, because we expect that you're much more than an ATM machine just dispensing. And if maybe you could develop and elucidate on that for us, please.
Sure. So the Ministry of Education is large and widely varied in its mandate. We are responsible for a number of agencies, tertiary institutions. We are responsible also for state agencies which provide services to support the children at schools, such as the NSDSL. At the ministry, we provide support in various ways to students. So you may have seen some of our votes include private special schools, private schools, government-assisted schools, denominational schools, primary, secondary schools, a number of different institutions. These are governed by cabinet decisions, yes. So, for instance, in terms of the private schools, the private secondary schools, there is a cabinet decision that says basically that we can place SCA students, children can pass for that school, for the private secondary school, but the ministry pays the cost of it. So it's a $4,000 per student, and for a number of places at the school. The ministry provides oversight. So as I said, we disperse funds to various entities. The ministry provides oversight in terms of we have reporting procedures. A lot of financial statements, audited financial statements, need to be provided to the ministry on an annual basis. There are the schools themselves, the government secondary schools, are audited about twice every year. There are clerks at the school who maintain vote books. These vote books are brought into the ministry. Their monthly statements are submitted to the ministry. The vote books are reconciled at the end of the fiscal year. In terms of the agencies, we follow the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual, which asks for various things like administrative reports, strategic plans, cash flow statements, different reports that they need to provide, their board minutes, and these are submitted to the ministry and monitored by one of the divisions at our ministry. So we have been, these are some of the mechanisms that we use for oversight at the ministry.
Thank you very much. So you told me that the government secondary schools, in particular, they are audited twice every year. Are they audited by the internal audit of the Ministry of Education?
So our internal audit team will go in, they'll provide, a select group will go in to the school. They audit things like, the vote book, of course. They audit like fundraising activities, so any funds that the school may have raised on their own. They audit cafeteria fees. They audit, am I missing anything, Ms. Samaru? Yeah, go ahead. Ms. Samaru is our auditor.
Thank you.
So during the year, we'll go quarterly. We'll audit things like the vote book, inventory, furniture and equipment in the school, the assets. We'll also audit the cafeteria and school fundraising accounts, repair and maintenance projects less than 50,000, which is what the principal has authority to spend, and any other things needed auditing that the permanent secretary might request us to do.
Okay, so might I ask how, you said quarterly you audit the schools. How many schools are these?
We have 85 government secondary schools.
Right. And it means that you audit in any fiscal, each of these 85 4 times a year, 3 times a year?
Basically, yes, but maybe for the last quarter we'll do follow-up audits on the ones that were previously done.
And how big is your audit staff?
Establishment, we have 13 auditing assistants, 4 auditor 1s and auditor 2, and myself, the auditor 3. So that's about 19.
19?
Yes.
All filled, all with bodies?
We have persons acting, but not all filled.
So what are the level of vacancies?
Well, at this point we have about 6 vacancies, but they have acting bodies.
Okay. And what I'm looking for, without bodies. How many posts without bodies? So your establishment, if I understand well, is 19?
Yes. So
how many posts without bodies?
Right, so the auditing assistant would be about 12.
Without bodies? I want to know how many without bodies.
No, but everybody acting. So it's filled with acting persons.
So you have no vacancies without bodies?
Yes.
Yes, Piers, I understand that?
Yes.
So you have 19 people?
Yes.
Okay, good. And let me ask, at the end of the fiscal, September 2024, you would have done, or let's say by now, you would have finished all your audits for the 85 schools.
For fiscal 24, we were doing the teachers' back pay, which kept us until February 2024 from last year. Fiscal year, we were doing the teachers' back pay. So that took us until February 24. And afterwards, we went to some government primary schools doing the vote book and some cafeteria and school fundraising. So up till now, for last financial year, we didn't really go to the government secondary schools.
Okay, so from what I understand from what you just said is you will do both government secondary school and primary schools.
There are samples from the primary government schools.
All right. Just now, apart from the government secondary schools and the primary schools, what other institutions you audit?
So presently, we audit in the private special schools. The other institutions, no, it will only be the Ministry of Education head office and the primary and secondary government schools.
Okay, thanks. And what you told me is that you're behind in the government schools for fiscal 2024.
Yes.
Have you finished your primary schools for fiscal 2024?
Yes, we did a sample of those schools.
You did a sample?
Yes.
Out of how many schools you did how many?
So we audited about 30 schools who received direct funding with a vote book. So that would have been about 30 schools.
Out of how many? There's a sample. Out of how many? Trying to ascertain how big your sample size.
326. About 326 government primary schools. But these schools will be schools that receive funding via the vote book directly. So they will be treated as a sub-accounting unit. So those are schools that will have a VP and a principal.
Yeah, so let's compare like with like.
Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Ms. Manek or DFA can actually indicate the total number of schools that receive the direct funding.
Right, good. Thank you.
So the large primary schools receive direct funding based on the total student population. Each year it would vary, but on average it's around 35 large government primary schools that would receive direct funding from the ministry.
Okay, thank you very much. So then would I be correct in saying if the sample was 30, they would have done almost all? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And as far as there was one other category, that's the special schools?
Private special schools.
Yeah, the private special schools?
There were 13.
There were 13.
Yes, we went to all.
You went to all?
Yeah.
So that in terms of the internal audit function, as part of the oversight, Pierce, would I be correct in saying that you don't have a challenge?
Not at this time.
Not for this time?
Yeah, not at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. The other thing I wanted to ask, though, is that in terms of the projects and programs, I'm looking a bit at your DP and so. Do you have challenges with respect to fulfilling those projects, and what types of challenges you have experienced?
So generally, in terms of the DP, we have our, as of 2024, totally we would have achieved 73.5% of we would have spent 73.5% of our allocation. The main challenges, of course, would be funding, I guess as every ministry would say. The change in the procurement legislation also presented a bit of a challenge for some of the agencies because they would have had to hire staff who would have provided the procurement expertise, as well as some of the procurement processes. Well, remember, it's different from what it was before. There may be, in terms of the standstill periods, there may be a longer time, so that may have been our major, those would have been our major challenges with respect to the DP.
Okay,
but release of funds.
Release of funds. I took that under allocation.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess by now your procurement challenges would have ironed out themselves.
Yeah, I think in the first year, which would have been last year, I believe, we would have been presented mainly with that as a challenge. However, in this year, as with all agencies, I believe that everybody is getting accustomed to the new legislation, and we have training from OPR, so everybody is better skilled.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much. All right, so I just want to look at something that interests me in your submission, where you say that your payments of grants to assisted secondary schools ensure the smooth operation of 41 government-assisted schools. That's on page 4.
So it's just a minor correction. It's really 39 government-assisted secondary schools. Yeah, so we remember as Ministry of Education, and our minister always emphasizes it to us, that we want to keep our schools open. You know, that is our main focus, so that we can provide quality education to the students of the nation. And it will lead into infrastructure, and I'm sure we'll get there soon. But that is one of our main focuses at the ministry. That's our main focus, keeping the schools open and trying to,
Okay, so that in terms of this assistance to the assisted secondary schools, goods and services, would you know what percentage then of their expenditure your grants will cover?
I will defer this question to Ms.
But
Mann.
I mean, if it is that is not at your fingertips, we could take the answer in writing.
Yes. Yes, I think we can provide that answer in writing, because we do get submissions from the schools in terms of their budgets and their requests. So we can work it out. And get back
because
to you on
of course you're not giving them everything that they want.
No, because we don't have sufficient allocation to do that.
So that helps me understand the meaning of smooth.
However, I must say there's a formula used to calculate the allocation to each of the schools, and it is based on enrollment figures. So enrollment figures and size of facilities.
Okay, so could you therefore in your written
we will
response give us an idea of what that formula is that you apply?
Yes.
And the last question I'll ask of this wrongs, and then I'll open it up to the floor. In that same table that you have on page 4, Item 9, when you talk about protective gear, CPO's agreement with tutor, 1.7 million. Okay, is this an ongoing category of expense? Or is this specific to some particular matter? Like, say, for instance, if it was specific to COVID or...
I'd like to pass this response to our accounting executive 1.
Thank you.
Yes, when we had the outbreak with COVID, we did supply a lot of protective gear to the schools, and it was a bit ongoing after that we supplied what they needed in terms of, we supplied like extra sinks, we supplied masks, we supplied hand sanitizers, we supplied cleansing products like bleach and disinfectants and that sorts of things.
So this 1.7, if I understand it well, this is for what, 2023, 2024?
It was just an estimate that we had put in there, because we supply the schools with sufficient funds to cover all that they basically need in terms of anything like that, should it arise.
Okay, let me ask another way. in terms of the agreement with tutor, is there a formula to arrive at what sum you give to under this line item? And also, is there a mechanism to decide how much goes to any one of these 39 schools? Or if it's something based on request, if you could give us some idea of how this works.
We will have to look into that and provide that for you in writing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And therefore, also in doing that, if you'll also kindly give us what the money given to a particular school, what it was used for.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I now open up the floor. Yes, please, Member Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I want to stay in that line of questioning grants to assisted secondary schools, goods and services, and grants to assisted primary schools, school equipment and upkeep of school premises. I'm assuming that these two votes are very similar votes, more or less the same. You've identified some cabinet minutes here, and of course, we don't know what the cabinet agreed to, but piggybacking on what Chair was asking, is there a set agreement with respect to these expenditure items that the ministry would undertake to discharge? Is there a set agreement, you said a formula, is it set?
Yes, it's set. So I don't have the formula at hand. We can provide it in writing. But it is, as I said, it is based on the size, the enrollment of the school population, and also the size of the facilities.
Yeah, because you didn't identify any sort of formula or set range under secondary schools, but in primary schools, we see that there appears to be a set amount for electricity, $25,000 per school, $6,500 per school for WASA, TSTT, direct funding, and it's based on a per student, but it's not, I see that in primary schools, but I don't see it in secondary schools. Is it something similar?
Secondary schools pay their own utility bills. They pay their own utility bills. So the formula covers, for primary school, the formula covers utility bills. And it is based on, yes, a per student amount, an amount per student. However, for secondary schools, they pay their own utility bills, so that is not included in the per student amount. Primary bills, utility bills are paid by the ministry. Those bills come straight to the ministry for payment.
Okay, so when you say secondary schools pay their own utility bills, you give them the money and they...
Yes, so they get an allocation, okay, and they can use it for payment of their bills, operational expenses.
All right, and just to be clear, assisted secondary schools and assisted primary schools, those are denominational schools?
Pardon?
Those are denominational schools largely?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so other question, with respect to the ancillary staff, those salary ranges are set by, those are the public sector salary ranges, or do the schools themselves control the salary ranges?
I can refer this question to the accounting executive.
Sure.
It's not really based on what our ranges are. I think it's a set amount that is agreed upon. It's not like what it's in the public service or anything like that.
All right. So we see that for grants to assisted secondary schools, we have estimated for 2025 40 million. But in your, I suppose these are internal estimates, you've estimated 48.5 million, and then you have an amount for minor equipment, about 32 million, for a total of about $80 million. So the reason why I'm asking these questions is what happens with the $40 million that is not accounted for in the estimates Okay, answer that and then I'll ask the second question.
Well, basically, we just cover salaries for the ancillary staff. We cover books, materials, practical subjects, and we cover their running course. The other course we don't cover, so most of the times the school themselves will raise the funds that they require to cover any additional funding that they need.
But is it that the Ministry of Education is required to honor the agreement?
It's based on the funds that we have allocated.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically the $40 million that is not allocated, the school would raise their
own funds, yes.
Okay. All right. So what role does the ministry play in constraining this expenditure or finding efficiencies to reduce the amount of expenditure where possible?
Okay, so
for example, turning off the lights with respect to electricity, practical subjects, perhaps there are some efficiencies that you could find. Well, the protective gear, that's some type of formula in an agreement, and minor equipment and so on. What role do you all play in just constraining the expenditure?
Right. So, I mean, we are constrained by funding. So we would obviously prioritize the schools and the expenditure based on the allocation that we have received. When that is done, we also we would provide guidelines to schools in terms of I mean, we have educational programs going on. We partner with the Ministry of Education, Energy. I think there was a partnership with the Ministry of Energy recently, and they were informing persons, educating about same thing that you were speaking about, conservation in terms of electricity and energy conservation.
Yeah. Is there like a target that you have in terms of your overall expenditure?
Well, it's normally the allocation, right, isn't it? You want to take it?
At the beginning of the financial year, the schools are required to submit a request based on the value of funding that is required and in various categories. We are aware that minor equipment is not at the top of the priority list because of the limited funding that is available. However, there is a sub-item that is provided and has been provided additional funding to support and purchase minor equipment for schools.
Yeah.
So you have the desk, tables, chairs, those type of things. In addition to that, corporate sponsors do provide a lot of the small minor equipment that schools require. They also raise their funds. They have fundraising activities where they raise funding, which is what the internal audit division of the ministry audits annually, which is used towards expenditure for the school, specifically for those purposes. And it is basically, it helps to cover a lot of the cost that is not met by the allocation provided annually.
Right. So I understand that. I'm just speaking from the point that both parties, the Ministry of Education and the school, must understand it and must be able to predict what they can expect during a particular academic year. So is it that, well, I'm hoping that they're not caught by surprise. These are things that you all discuss and they know what type of allocation they are to expect and what type of assistance they are to expect. Is that the case?
Yes, we do have meetings with tutor and other stakeholders, the denominational boards, Association of Principals, and we have regular meetings with them, maybe about every term at least, and some of these issues and any challenges are discussed, and we try to come up with some solutions as well.
Okay. Madam Chair.
Yes, Member Hislop.
A question from the public. As it relates to the internal audit department of the ministry. If the internal auditors are required to be certified in the field of auditing, and if not, is the internal audit department supported by qualified contract staff?
Yes, yeah. So in the internal audit staff, we are not required. I am the only person who is certified. The rest of staff is seniority, and at one point they had an auditing assistant exam, and they would have written this exam and they would have passed, and service commissions would have appointed them in the vacancies. And as persons retire or the vacancy come available, they would appoint people acting from the ordinary service. So only the auditor 3 is certified, the rest of them have experience via accounting and working in the ministry in different departments. That is how the system is for audit, internal audit in the government service. We have no contract positions, sorry. We have no contract positions, and we don't contract out any audit.
Thank you. Member Bacchus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon again to everyone. In your introduction, I was quite fascinated to understand that you had done 586 projects in 2024, to the tune of close to 100 million in terms of what you've done. That is a typical number for the ministry to engage itself in?
Yes, I would say so, because I don't have the 2023 figure to tell you. However, I would say that a lot of the work of the ministry, the infrastructure work of the ministry, as you know, we have an aging school population. So a lot of the problems are associated with sewer, electrical, roof works, some structural. We have a system in place, SIMS, at the ministry. It's a database where principals can report any issues, infrastructure issues they have, and our EFPPD unit, headed by Mr. Cupid, they pick up on the issues and they deal with them. We partner with MTS, who is very supportive of us, very responsive to us, and they are our project managers. So just all of that to say that on a daily basis, because we have a chat, on a daily basis, we have about 3 to 4 emergencies that can close schools down, and we endeavor to remedy these as quickly as possible. They're treated as emergency works, and that's so if it's about 3 to 4 every day, you can imagine how much in a week, in a month, in a year, so it is a large number of work that passes through our EFPPD and MTS.
So the projects are mainly infrastructural in nature.
Yes.
These you're talking about. And the aging population you're talking about is in terms of the infrastructure, the plant
school
itself.
Infrastructure, yes.
3 to 4 emergencies.
Yes,
and you would classify an emergency as?
So as I said, we have sewer problems, so a leak in sewer. We have electrical problems, the water pump not working. Well, electrical problems at the school. Fire breakers, so we had the fire in Malik the other day. We have breakers catching fire. Yeah. Roof. The roof, sometimes roofs and ceilings are caving in. We have, what else? Yeah, chokes and sewer lines, just different things. And as I said, that may cause a school to close. And we really try not to have schools closed, because we don't want, we want to continue education for the children. So that is, those are some of the issues we have, infrastructure issues.
So emergency under infrastructure would really be something that is almost unpredicted.
Yes.
That occurs, but you classify it as emergency because it can close the school.
Yes. And it has to be dealt with immediately.
So is it that a large percentage of these 586 projects would have fit under that kind of?
Yes.
Chair? I know you want to continue.
So thanks so much, Member Bacchus. And Pierre, so, okay, we identify emergency as work that is likely to close the school. And could you give us a sort of, you say as soon as possible, a sort of target time you'll look to deal with emergencies?
So obviously depending on the nature of the matter, the cause of the emergency, it may take a longer or shorter time. However, we deal with them as quickly as possible. I would say sometimes sewer chokes, we try to get those cleared within a day, Wayne. Yeah, within a day. We have to go through MTS. We go through MTS as our project manager. They do procurement for us. But within not longer than a week, and we do not have schools closed for that long. So it might be 2 to 3 days at max.
All right, so I'm just going to call some, and maybe you could help me with it, right? So, I'm seeing here, this is Appendix 22. Yeah, Appendix 22. It's page 133. All right, so let's look at number 3. Pre-primary. So I see here when intend to ECC 2024. It's telling me that that's emergency work, right? It's classified as emergency pump works. MOE approval the 14th of May 2024. Okay, or the one under it, Harp Place, ECC, 2024, emergency works, washroom repair, 14th of May. And, I could go right through this and find things that you all have classified as emergency. That's why I want to know what's emergency. I don't see a start date, I don't see a completion date. In contrast, let's say number 1, which was sewer works, your approval date was the 7th of March 2024. By the 13th of March 2024, 100% completion. How do you synchronize those kinds of things that we're seeing?
Right, so it would depend, as I said, it would depend on the type of work to be done. Things like electrical, roofing, those take a little longer to be completed. So we had, I can give an example. We had Aranguez. It's a school that there was some issues. So there was like some electrical issues to be fixed, roofing issues. And those were fixed, I would say, within about a month period. That was one of our recent schools that we fixed. They were fixed within a month. But in the meantime, however, if school operations are affected, what we do is that we fix an area that can be utilized, and we prioritize the Form 4 and 5 classes, the exam classes, and we rotate other students, the other forms, and we bring them, as soon as the works are in fact completed, we can bring out the entire school. But we do it on a rotational basis so that the students can have an education in the meantime while the school is being fixed.
So within the context of emergency works,
yes,
you have a hierarchy.
Yes.
Okay. Is this known to the principals, your stakeholders?
Yes. So we have as I said, we have a chat that is like daily. Public holidays, any time of day. We have and on this chat, the supervisors can report issues because they would get it through their principals. The school supervisors can report issues, as well as EFPPD reports issues relating to infrastructure that they have received. And as soon as these works are announced, we get approval to have the BOQs done, which is the bill of quantities, which will cost the project, which will be reviewed by the QS at the ministry. Once that is done, it is approved to go forward to MTS, following which MTS would have their procurement process, and we would, the works will begin.
Okay. But what I was asking is there I understand the need for the instant communication and so on, but I was wondering if anywhere there is documented a sort of hierarchy of things. Now, I accept that my school might have a plumbing issue and your school might have a plumbing issue, both urgent.
Yes.
But when you come and see my plumbing issue, it's a different kind. I accept that.
Yes.
So you just can't lump all plumbing in the same category. But if electrical in the normal course of things will rank higher than a pump or air conditioning.
I can pass you on to our Director of EFPPD and he can respond.
Thank you.
Right, Madam Chair. So essentially, we undertake two sets of works. We have what we call planned works and the unplanned works. The unplanned works are the emergencies, as we just articulated. That will range from sewer system, electrical issues, you name it, things that will result in the school being down. We try to get those things up running, try to get the plants up and running within a couple of days. And then we have the planned works. Those are the works where we have different levels. We would indicate that a sewer system might be number 1, you understand, a roof might be number 2, as the case might be, and paving the yard might be 3. So we have different tier levels. We would then attend it based on that order of priority. So the plan works are implemented during July, August, as well as December.
Right. But I understand it still doesn't, and maybe we'll ask you in another question. I don't want to linger on this. Even, when I look closely at written emergency, which is unplanned, I see some discrepancies that I can't understand, but maybe a written question will allow you to expand a little more on that, and we can move on to something else. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, so Member Mitchell, if you want to, Member Hislop, if you all...
Yeah, I'll be brief.
Yes.
Going to grants to private primary schools, grants for private secondary schools. Each school would have a different arrangement per student.
So there's a cabinet decision related to the private schools, and there's another one related to the private special schools. Both receive a fee of $4,000 per student. These are monitored through our school supervision unit. So the schools would submit their termly attendance. These are verified by our school supervisors and processed through the school supervision unit and sent to the PS for approval and subsequent payment.
Okay. So you just spoke about your school supervision unit and your school supervisors. There's another term that you have in here. It just escaped me. A leadership.
District leadership.
District leadership. Could you explain what the district leadership team does and who they interface with?
Yes, I can pass you on to Ms. Lisa Henry David for this question.
Yeah. So the district leadership team comprises officers from the school supervision, curriculum, and student support services. So there's a team approach to treating with issues at the level of the school.
Yeah, and who they interface with?
They interface with teams from each individual school.
Okay, which may include the past students association?
No. The principal, usually the principal and maybe a teacher or two, or if the school has a guidance officer or social worker or such, depending on the nature of the issues.
And in terms of the assisted primary and secondary, because I see that the district leadership team also interfaces with those schools. So they would interface with a team from the school, perhaps maybe and the denominational board.
It's usually the principal and the teacher that at that level.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Could you tell me, the feedback loop or the accounting loop where we see whether there is value for money with the $4,000 per student to these private schools? Like, how are they doing what are they, what is the actual output, what is the quality of education going in, and how do we judge it?
So in general, that is measured through the examination results of the students attending these schools.
Yes.
So annually, when our Research and Evaluation Division looks at the CXC results, they would rank the schools, or they would look at the percentage of students achieving a full certificate, maths, English, and 3 subjects, 5 subjects inclusive of maths and English, and that will be compared to the performance at the government and government-assisted schools, as it were.
So the parent that sends his or her child to these private schools, are they required, the private primary or secondary schools, are they required to pay any money in terms of tuition or anything?
No, they're not.
So government
Yes, so
takes
4,000 per child per term.
Okay. All right, so it's not like a Cedar Grove or any
No.
of those schools. It's a different type of school. And how do these schools do? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that for the private secondary schools, there are 12 schools that have been identified in the cabinet minutes as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want me to list them or...
No, I see them listed.
Okay, yeah.
How do these schools generally perform? Or, the students generally perform?
Comparatively, off the top of my head, they lie somewhere between the government assisted and the government, but we can provide that information for you in writing.
All right, so off the top of your head, you would say that you're
it's
receiving
in
value for money
Yes.
with respect to what you pay. Okay, thank you.
Member Hisler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up from where Member Mitchell left off, you shared with us that the ministry intends to roll out the following measures to ensure effective compliance, proper management of assets, and adequate performance. And I think this deals also with the private secondary schools. What's the status of that of the rollout of those measures?
I would say it's still in a discussion stage or developmental stage in terms of plans. We have the documentation that we use for the government secondary schools and the government assisted schools. So it is a matter of getting the supervisors and other staff to go into these private schools. We have increased our number of supervisors over the last couple of months. So now we have a greater number of persons who can be assigned these schools to do their checks and balances.
What's the complement of your school supervisory team?
Is it about 56? It's more. Oh.
And is it adequate? If it's not, where is the shortfall?
Okay, we'll provide the number in writing, but I think they're up to the required amount, or if not, very close.
Okay. And as we continue with the grants, in terms of the monies or the grants paid to the private secondary schools, and do you have arrears owing to the private schools? So
No.
it's up to date, correct?
It's up to date. The bills for the current term that we're in, the September to December term, are actually receiving the attention of the ministry right as we speak. You would appreciate that releases would have been slow in coming because of how late the budget was approved. So we are processing those bills currently to pay the monies to the schools within short order.
Okay, thank you.
Following from those two questions, what is the function of the district officers? Can you break it down just very simply?
Okay, so an education district office is comprised mainly of the school supervision, the school supervisors for that district. As well, there would be a presence from our curriculum division, and there would be a presence from student support services. So these entities come together to manage the schools in the district and to ensure that the operations in the district adhere to ministry policy and that the needs of the schools and by extension the children are being met. Yeah, there are 7 education districts in Trinidad and then there's Tobago.
Right. What does the management of the school, what does it entail?
Okay, so the supervisors are assigned schools, so each supervisor would have a certain number of schools under their purview. They would make visits to the schools to look at both academic performance as well as any other issues, operational issues that may or may not arise. And with respect to curriculum, they provide support to ensure that the curriculum, the national curriculum is being followed, and that they also instruct and assist teachers if an issue is determined, if it is determined that there is an issue, they will provide training to the staff. So for example, when we get results from SEA or from CSEC and we do analysis, we will determine that maybe there's an area in certain schools, an area of weakness where the children are not performing up to par. And between curriculum and supervision, they will come together to provide training to the teachers in the schools where it is deemed to have an issue. And they would also look at any other types of managerial or operational issues that the schools may have, and they will treat with them accordingly.
Just, Mrs. Henry David, in terms of the number of school supervisors to schools, is that the 1 in 12 you'll refer to? 1 to 12?
I don't.
In the district leadership team, the DLT, there's something that, in general, the assignment of SS2S and SSS1 is determined by the number of primary schools in the district in a ratio of 1 SS to 12 primary schools.
Yeah, thereabout.
Does that, in fact, exist?
Okay, off the top of my head, I would have to. I don't want to mislead. This body.
So you'll double check that for me?
We will double check.
Yeah,
but that's
and
what
one
we
thing,
try to
also, if you could double check for me, is there a difference between a SS and a SSS1?
Okay, so SS is school supervisor. The most senior is the school supervisor 3, and they are responsible for the secondary schools. And at the primary level, there are school supervisors 2 and 1. So the 3 is in charge of the district. The 1s and the 2s report to the 3. But the 3s focus on the secondary schools, and the 2s and the 1s, the primary schools.
And the plain SS?
No, well, maybe just
So that's a 1?
Maybe they just any category. Maybe that is what it was meant to convey. So
all right. So
1s, 2s, and 3s.
What I'd ask then, therefore, if maybe you all could just relook that paragraph, school supervision and management division, that first paragraph. If you could just relook that and see if we need some clarification on that, because there's a category that I can't fit into what you have set out. And
Madam
one
Chair,
last.
which page?
Hold on. There's your DLT, Appendix 1.
Oh,
right?
The appendices.
Yeah, we can't go according to pages the way all they give us this mass here. We just have to try and create a conversation. I really want to feel like all they wanted to snow us under, but we will come out like, Groundhog Day clear. I want to just ask one thing that wasn't clear to me earlier. When in dealing with the fees for students of private secondary schools, where we say it's about $4,000 per student per term. In your submission, this is on page 20, I am understanding you to tell me on average there are about 3,500 students. Earlier before you says on average 4,000. So I'm not going to argue for 500. But I have a difficulty in tying that way up with the submission on page 21. When we talk about benefits, and it said facilitates the education of approximately 11,739 people, students.
I think that one on page 21 is an error.
Is an error?
Yeah.
So what are supposed to put there? 4,000?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so
Unless-
if per year 4,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if really we could look at that and give us some clarification on that when you're doing the further written responses. Member Hislop, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to get a sense of how we're still dealing with the grants to the private secondary schools. What's the timeline between payments in terms of, so you pay per term, what's the accepted timeline between when the term ends that the grants are paid to the schools?
Before.
Or are they paid at the start of the term?
So we get they send in their invoices, their claim forms, submissions, that would normally be sent, let's just say for this term between September to December, term 1, it should have been sent by the end of September, because they would have to have their attendance records and all of that. And they would then be processed by as I said, the school supervision unit, in terms of verification. So that's to be verified first, the attendance records, to ensure that these are actual students at the school, because we are paying per student. And following if everything is verified and correct, we then, the claims are processed and we pay before the end of the term. So these claim forms are actually at accounts units at this time, but it's also dependent on releases. So we have releases now and they will be paid shortly.
Okay, so you pay for per student per term.
Yes.
How, let's say for instance the student drops out of school mid-term.
Yeah, so those are recorded. We have where students they drop out, and at least by the next term, they will not be covered. We will not be paying for them.
So then it means that if a student drops out of school, you have a situation where the state may be paying for a student who not in attendance for that term.
No, but remember, these are verified by the supervisors. They go into the schools, verify the figures, and but we do have it is recorded on the list where they may be transferred out, they may be absent, not coming to school, deceased, migrated, different reasons, and we do not count those in the payments, because when the submissions come to the ministry, they come to the PS for approval, and I also check the list, and those are not covered.
All right. So there may be an instance where you may have a lag. Right. But all right. So just to clarify, or just to get some information, has there been any situation where in your audit that there may have been discrepancies with some of the private schools in terms of if any discrepancy in terms of the payment of the grant?
In terms of discrepancy, can you define?
Well, we treated with the paid 6.
Yeah.
In their submission, right? So we under detection, right? It says during the substantive testing, the health of systems and controls and compliance to rules and regulations are assessed. In the event of non-compliance or red flags, the auditee is appraised of findings and observations. Reports are forwarded to the accounting officer for further action indicating the level of risk. According to the level of risk detected and based on constraints, the auditor may conduct surveys more frequently in addition. So what instances are we speaking of here? Because we're treating with the private, with grants to government secondary, Yeah, grants to government secondary education program.
I'm not aware of any instances at this time.
All right. And as it relates to the private secondary schools?
Hold on.
So it's a clean ship.
So there's a theoretical response.
Yeah.
Yes.
So no red flags, and maybe the auditor might be present.
Yeah,
No red flags have occurred.
No, I'm not aware of any.
Member Bacchus.
Thank you again, Chair, and thanks to all the members so far. Just a couple questions from the public. We want to keep our public engaged. Should be fairly simple. The first one, Chair, through you. Given the recent fire at the school, and we mentioned it earlier in the thing, are all schools required to have functional OSH committees? And this is something under the purview of the, is that so?
Yes, they also have crisis management teams within the schools. They have safety officers who would also form part of these committees, and they would meet. When the fire happened at Malik, it was the crisis committee that would have taken the lead and would have contacted the fire service, contacted the supervisor, and notified the ministry of what was occurring at the time.
And of course, this is in conjunction with the DLT and the HSSC that you have as well.
Yes.
Thank you. And the second question again, through last one from that came out. PS noted that principals have authority to spend, and there was a limit that you put in there. Are principals also accounting officers or given delegated authority by the PS pursuant to the Exchequer and Audit Act?
Yes, so they are delegated authority to spend $50,000 and under. Yes, we have, and when we had the new procurement legislation, we did provide guidelines to the principals.
Thank you, Chair.
Member Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Chair. PS, I'd like to take you now to transfers to state enterprises, National Schools Dietary Services Limited. 81 of 134. PS?
Minister?
Yeah. Now, I recall when I was going to school, it wasn't milk and biscuits. We did get a very horrible taste in Ramsaran's peanut punch. But when I went to school, I believe there was a means test to receive these lunches. I think you had to sign up with the principal, but not everyone got the lunches. Has there been a change to that policy, and is it that everyone is provided with meals?
Okay, so currently there's no change, and there's a committee that is working to develop the means test.
No change to the means test?
Sorry, no. The committee is developing let Ms. Lisa Henry David answer, please.
Yeah, Ms. Henry David.
So currently, the students receive meals based on request, and the principal makes a judgment call.
Yeah.
There is a committee that is looking at developing a means test in order to ensure that those who need the meals are getting them. And if there are changes in the number of children, if there are to be changes in the number of children per school who receive meals, these requests come from the principals to the office of the director of school supervision, where a judgment is made, and then the meals may be increased or decreased based on what the school has requested. And we also do checks, and in terms of checks and balances, we look at the percentage wastage on a daily basis and try to adjust meals to ensure that we keep that down as much as possible. And I think it's less than, when they report, it's usually less than between 1% and 2% sometimes, or even less. And
Yeah.
we check that weekly.
Yes, see, I know there seemed to be some sort of change, and now you've explained that the principals make the requests. I know, because I think my son probably helps with the keeping down the wastage. Or that might be reflective of the quality of meals that we provide to him. But he doesn't need it, but it's available to everyone. The other question is, I see that $260 million has been allocated. Is that sufficient to cover their annual operating expenses? $260 million for 2025 in the draft estimates of expenditure.
It's close, but not quite. Our figures here indicate that they would have liked to have gotten at least 288 million to cover.
Right. So, if you look at the estimates, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but the estimates have gone down in 2023. And I was hopeful that the reason why the estimates have been going down was because you have been working with NAMDEVCO and with the local farmers to use more local foods, local inputs, cheaper inputs, healthier options, and therefore would bring down the level of expenditure in purchasing food. Could you comment on?
We do utilize local produce where possible. Sometimes there is an issue of supply, reliability of supply, but wherever possible, we use local produce. I think we can appreciate that after the COVID-19 pandemic, we had a lot more requests from persons who might have had loss of livelihood and so on during that time. And this is why we would have had increasing requests at the level of the school for meals, and that may be why there has been an increase. Plus, in 2022, there was a small increase to the cost per meal. The cost of a meal went up by $1. So for each type of meal, so that would have also resulted in some increase in the total spend.
That's fair. But I want you to say a little more, if you can, on this policy of local inputs into these meal boxes and where we are with, attempting to go all local.
All local, that's interesting. I think we may have to provide that answer in writing, but I can say that we do utilize the pumpkin and so on. Local.
Sweet potato mash.
Well, it depends also.
Potato flour. Cassava flour.
That's not necessarily cheaper, eh?
Yeah.
And you also need to look at what the children will eat, because what children eat varies from district to district, and we have to be responsive to those sorts of needs. It doesn't make sense. While we have the schools at the level of the school, the teachers interact with the children and encourage them to eat and to try different things. At the end of the day, if you're looking at cost, you need to ensure that what you provide is what they will eat. So,
but with respect to the policy outcomes, you'll play a role in, molding the tastes of our young ones, as well as, stimulating the agricultural industry at the same time, minimizing the forex and all of that. So I understand, you may want to provide, rice or things that children may eat, but, you could also, because they're at primary school level, they could probably also work to mold their tastes. All of our tastes.
Documented in the mandate for
So, Ms. Manik is advising that NSDSL has, as part of its mandate, the use of local produce. They do have a policy which we can obtain and share with the committee.
And I see that you mentioned there is a recipe testing and development department within the ministry, or is that within the state enterprise?
NSDSL.
NSDSL.
Yeah.
And are you aware of whether they're working towards like reducing the sugar content or?
Yes, as a
salt
matter of fact, the ministry has had since 2017 or thereabout a policy with respect to not serving sugary drinks and so on, and that's one of the reasons why they had replaced the juice with water.
Yes.
With the meals and so on.
Right.
And yes, they look at providing, I think it's 1/3 of the daily recommended allowance at breakfast and 1/4 at lunch. It may be the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So they look at what they provide and they try to ensure that the meals are nutritious while meeting, and of course using local produce, but and trying to have delicious meals that the children will actually enjoy and partake of.
That saves us from the peanut punch, but this is good news. Perhaps you could speak more about it. It's very good news. I know that there was a serious concern, and Ministry of Health took the lead in reducing the sugary drinks and all of that. And I think it's really some good news. Yeah.
Thanks. And just to echo what Member Mitchell has said, this is really good news. Just one related question to that, and it relates to quality control. How are you managing the quality control aspects of it? Not the nutritional value in it, but the quality of the food itself.
NSDSL also has persons who look at quality at both the kitchens and, in fact, from kitchen to school. So they look at how the meals are prepared, how they are stored, how they are transported, what are the conditions at the school, and they look at ensuring, because you can imagine they don't want to have any incidents at all. So, and I don't think we've had any in quite some time. So they're working.
Good news, Chair.
How many caterers do you have within the system?
It's approximately 75, but we'll provide that in writing.
75. And you shared with us in your submission about a menu cycle. What is that?
So that they ensure that they don't serve the same thing week in, week out. So they have a cycle wherein the meals, they provide particular meals to give the children that variety, to ensure that the meals are nutritious and that the children don't get bored of the meals and so increase the wastage. So they have a cycle for
seasonal meals as well.
Yes, they do somewhat seasonal as best they can with their price management.
I just want to go back a bit, and I wanted to ask about Serval. Where in the submission, and this is at page 16, you're always saying that in terms of how you assess their effectiveness with respect to the implementation of their mandate. And your statement is at present informal inquiries are made with respect to the student progress. Whereas with other assisted schools, you can use, as you say, trend data. So I wanted to find out what is the nature of these informal inquiries. And then you said that you are working on a process of developing a formal approach to monitoring the students assigned to Serval. I want to know where that has reached and what is the anticipated date that that approach will be instituted.
Okay. So just as I indicated before, we're looking at a process for ensuring that we actively monitor the schools where we place our children. So we may have to give you a date in writing, but as I said, as we have more supervisors and we are looking at other classes of quality control persons, that we were looking at bringing on board. I'm not sure what's the status of that aspect,
Okay.
but we'll give you a date in writing.
Okay, all right. So, and maybe you'll help distinguish in my mind, because I heard you say that in respect to other schools. I thought the approach with Suval was something different based on how this is written. But I noted, though, that in Cabinet, June 2023, which is over a year ago, you're talking about the role of a certain measures, and you identified the measures, right, to ensure effective compliance, proper management of assets, and adequate performance, right? And I picked this out of page 42. It's repeated somewhere else again in your submission, where you talk about annual information to be provided by proprietors, and you list things on it there. The annual statistical return, setting up of your monitor and evaluation unit, and where is that? Because the detail that is set out here is very different to the kind of generalized response that we got earlier.
Okay, so in terms of the monitoring and evaluation, we do have the annual statistical report, which provides data on students and teachers, and we do get that on an annual basis, right? In terms of the monitoring and evaluation unit, we do not currently have a monitoring and evaluation unit at the ministry. However, we have several research units who in the interim would provide some of the support. However, we have prepared cabinet notes in respect of the M&E unit, and hopefully it will be submitted to cabinet shortly.
Okay, and this annual information to be provided by proprietors, is that a separate thing, or is that related to your monitor in an evaluation unit?
So with respect to the registration of private schools, which is a note that we would have referred to there, we would have had several town meetings, virtual meetings with the proprietors, and they would have been given a 3-year period within which to come up to standard. We are still in the middle of that period, but progress has been a little bit slow, I will admit, in terms of persons registering the schools anew, because they would have been registered under the old system, and they are now required to meet certain statutory requirements and then register with their updated information, and it has been slow going.
Yeah. And do you have, or do you intend, if you don't have already, to put in place some mechanism to assist the schools in meeting the requirements? Because sometimes we don't do things because not that we don't want to do it, it's just too hard, or we don't have the time.
We have engaged the different statutory authorities to assist, and in those town meetings they would have presented, and we are willing to. We are always available for persons to call in, to send in emails, to talk to us and let us know what is happening. And I know that at some point we did have interviews for a quality assurance unit, but that has not come on board as yet.
All right. And the deadline for the 3 years is when?
I think we might be about a year and a half.
Yeah, no, but
it'll be about a year and a half.
We have a date, and we've had a history where the midnight of the deadline, we realized the deadline was coming up and we hadn't sensitized people. So I really want to use this to kind of sensitize people.
And we have had at intervals, it wasn't one session and done. We would have had follow-up sessions with persons, but it's still slow going.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes, Member Marcus.
Yeah, so if I may, Chair, I'd like to move a bit to the development program under subhead 9, social infrastructure. If you're looking for it, it's about page 102 in the submission as we have it. And of course, there are supporting appendices associated with it. The stated purpose really deals with construction, rehabilitation, upgrade of facilities in tertiary institutions, improvement of ICT capabilities, etc., etc. In looking through the submission relative to the expenditures and the allocations in here, have there been any significant challenges in terms of the implementation of this? And just generally, how is it going?
So thank you. With respect to challenges, I think the implementation of our DP under the tertiaries have been moving relatively smoothly over the last 2 years or so. We've had some challenges with the onset of the regulations and agencies having to align themselves to comply with what the new requirements. So it has delayed the procurement processes in some cases. Other than that, timely releases is really the thing that often would affect probably startups. If you have mobilization, etc., that may impact the start of the project, of course, if we don't have the funds on time. So that might cause some delays there. But generally, our DP has been performing well in terms of the tertiaries and that sort of thing. We have a few other aspects of the DP, scholarships and IT and that sort of thing. I mean, they can speak more of that, but in terms of our tertiary education institutions, we've been doing well. I think scholarships is okay, and we've had a few challenges with the IT side of things, but they could elaborate on that.
So we have some IT projects, several of which most of them are at the procurement stage, such as the ebooks and numeracy and the wireless access for all primary schools. We have had one project that was completed in this fiscal year thus far. It was the procurement of 2476 laptops for, this would be for the computer labs at schools, secondary schools. These were all procured and distributed to 125 schools.
Yeah, and just to be clear, on the procurement side of things, the issue there would have been, I suspect, with agencies registering with the procurement areas and so on?
That's right. In some cases, some of our projects, in terms of finding suitability, in terms of contractors out there, some of the agencies have indicated that the persons who are registered to date, they weren't able to pull a pool that was suitable for the type of work that may be required, etc. So they have to await these contractors to get on board and get registered before they can actually go out for a tender process or that sort of thing.
And in a related question, Chair, from the public, related from the point of view that it is IT related, I guess it speaks to the curriculum side of what you do. Are students being operated, is the word they've described it as, for the 21st century society with classes in IT, robotics, cybersecurity, alternative energy, vehicles, etc., etc., etc. I guess it speaks to more to a curriculum direction more than an IT question, if you would, please, from the public.
So one of the projects that the ministry has had approved for this year, there was a cabinet decision at the end of September, actually. It's for the provision of basic ICT skills to students. I think it should be self-directed so that they can go on and learn at their pace. And of course, in the curriculum, we do have STEM/stream curriculum that is provided, and at our schools at forms 1 to 3, for the most part, they do provide that basic IT education, and students can go on to choose a couple of subjects at the form 4 and 5 level if they want to take those studies further.
Well, but is the intent to embed those, what we will call the modern ICT requirement skills, earlier in the curriculum
yes.
and earlier in the education system?
Yes.
Is that also the plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to add, we also have partnerships with private sector So I remember with Shell, I think with Huawei, we have the same kind of digital training exposure to digital, to the STEM, to technology for primary and secondary students.
As we hear on DP, I wanted to find out, and it's a bit related to the question that Member Bacchus asked with curricula. I see that you had a curriculum writers training and content development, a modest sum of $120,000. What has happened with that? Page 106 of page 134.
Yeah. So that was a residual balance of payment for the service provider for the program which would have been implemented in the previous years.
Okay.
That particular project was funded through a grant from the Commonwealth of Learning. So the project tied up in 2022, and it was just a residual sum that had to be paid off.
Thank you very much. Okay, and this other one, and maybe it's that too. What about St. Bede's Technology Center?
Specifically, why? Yeah, that's one of our MICs. That's one of their centers. They had a few. I think it's one or two projects they may have had, but those didn't. Let me just get to the item, but they didn't get off the ground this year. I think they've been pushed over. They rolled over essentially to 2025 fiscal. Yeah.
So most of the IT, would I be correct in saying that most of the IT will roll over to 2025?
Yeah, I believe so. Some of things are in procurement right now, and others are very close to being awarded, I believe. Yeah.
I can see it's kind of difficult to manage this and this together. So maybe it's in here, but sometimes it's difficult to manage it. All right, and
so we are hoping that all our IT projects will be completed in this fiscal. That's the aim.
Okay.
Because they are at procurement stage currently.
Yeah. So, P.S., maybe you could tell us a bit about the scholarships. And I'm looking, this is your appendix 18. G004, G005, G006, G007.
Right, so under G004, last fiscal, we would have had 456 scholars, and it is proposed in this fiscal that we would have, we have 254 currently, as at going forward to 2025, and we will have 100 scholars coming on board when the selection has been completed, which should be shortly.
And this estimated cost will be sufficient?
Yes. Yes.
And why I'm asking that, there's always something in the news about students not getting their monies on time and so on. How are these payments? I mean, I guess it may be different according to the student and the scholarship, but how do we intend to improve managing those disbursements to the students to ensure we don't have students out there who can't pay this, who are being threatened to being, lose their enrollment in a program because they're waiting on the money?
I can pass this on to Ms. Gadjuda.
Thank you.
Afternoon, Chair and members. With respect to these students and scholarships, there is a process for students getting paid. After the scholarships are awarded, students are required to sign a contract agreement. After this agreement is signed, then payments can be dispersed to the scholars. So usually when the scholarships are awarded, and you have 100, it doesn't mean that some person may be paid within this fiscal. So once the contracts are signed, the payments are done on a quarterly basis. Persons who are enrolled in the program, they have to provide their transcript and their status letter to continue receiving payments. which is their personal maintenance allowance and their book allowances.
However,
Explanation with respect to this. PSL looking at G004, where the allocation was 178 million. The actual expenditure was 53.7. Are correct there? And the total estimated cost was.
So as at the end of the fiscal,
It was at 97.
I'm seeing 79 million here, 79.4 million. Our expenditure was as at the end of September.
At the end of September?
Yes.
All right, so this may not have gone to there, but in the TEAL project activities with time frame, in that column,
Yes.
I'm seeing a total estimated cost of 300 million. Was there a shortfall? How do those things line up?
No.
Even with your 79 million?
No, so we have, we had a revised allocation of 99 million, and we spent 79 million in 2024. That's from our records.
Okay. So, where is the disconnect between your records? Explain to me and here.
You want to answer this one?
5 years ago, that's been 2021. With effect from 2021, a decision was taken to award only 100 scholarships. Prior to that, annually 400 scholarships was awarded. Those 400 scholars would have been coming forward, granted that their programs would take them between 3 to 5 years to complete. As of 2024, they would have completed and dropped off the books of the ministry. So going forward, what the ministry is carrying should be, and what we are budgeting for, is a maximum of 400 scholars. However, during the year, each year, not all scholars would have taken up their awards, and they delay, which they do have a 2-year period within which they can defer before they actually accept the award. That's the reason why there is a large disparity between last 4 years' expenditure being decreased gradually as opposed to the final. We have now reached a place where the expenditure has stabilized for 400 scholars under the G004 annually.
And I'd read somewhere, I can't find the page now, there was supposed to be some scholarship for people with disabilities. I hadn't seen any
Yes.
expenditure under
So-
that. What has happened with that?
Right, so yes, we do have that scholarship. It was recently approved to be reinstated by the cabinet, and it is closing. We have applications open currently, and they are closing on the 20th of December. We are collaborating with health and ministries of health and social development to promote awareness of this scholarship and to help us to have some increased applications.
Member Batissa?
Thank you, Chair. I'm seeing in the allocations for UTT, what is the status of the Academy for the Performing Arts? Because there's not the allocation there for that, and I know that they have some infrastructure.
Okay, so under the DP, UTT has a vote here that It's a combined vote. It's not only NAPA under that, it has about 4 UTT centers. You see it under, I think it's J051. So they do have 1 or 2 projects that they had put forward for 2024 under that vote. Specifically, there was upgrade of theater lighting, theaters 1 and 2, and installation of a sound system. So those were the 2 projects they had last year under that vote. As I say, it's not an individual vote, but a combined vote. One of the projects was deferred, and the other one was completed in fiscal 2024. So yes, there are those are the 2 projects that are running under that vote, and then we have a few more that we intend to implement this year as well. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. It has rolled over. Yeah. So I don't know.
Okay. Chair, through you again.
Yes, you go ahead.
What the maintenance of the elevators and so on? What's that a part of the?
That didn't come forward from UTT as part of a development program item, so I'm not sure if it
This is at the Academy for the Performing Arts, so that's the teaching side.
Yeah, well, as I'm saying, they didn't put that forward, but last fiscal or this fiscal under the DDP, under the development program, so I'm not sure if it lies somewhere else. Okay, so I'm being advised that if it's maintenance of lifts, it's probably under their recurrent vote.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. Was there anything also from the Creativity Campus? The Creativity Campus, the gaming program in particular, because they also had some equipment challenges.
That one doesn't ring a bell to me either. I didn't see that coming through DP for the last 2 or 3 years, so no. Not on the development program side of things for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, quickly, Mr. Henry, how large is the project unit within the Ministry of Education? I would imagine that it ought to be large.
Well, the project unit in the ministry is actually quite small. In terms of the group that deals with the tertiary education institutions, it's just 3 at the moment. There have been recommendations for some additional staff, which the ministry is considering, and some work is being done on. But as I said, the DP is split amounts, ICT, scholarships, as well as tertiary, so it's a number of units that are involved in the rollout of the DP. So the project management unit is sort of focused on the tertiary side of things specifically.
Okay, so which unit or department is concerned with these construction projects?
That's our EFPPD units, the infrastructure.
Yes. Okay.
But not at the tertiary institutions, these are schools.
Yes, schools.
Yes,
Yeah, that's what I'm focused on. Apologies, Mr. Henry. How large is your unit?
Yeah, essentially it's about 25 persons. We have persons out in the field also. We have technicians, engineers, and administrative staff who will lend support to these.
Okay. Which projects do you take on your own? Which projects? Okay, let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
Which construction projects do you directly supervise without the assistance of MTS or another state or statutory body?
All of the projects are undertaken through MTS. There are no projects that we undertake outside of MTS.
Okay, so for example, I saw establishment of Diego Martin Hype, construction of Hype Admin Omera Center.
That is Mr. Henry, so that's under tertiary.
Okay, right. So that's under the consolidated side, and that is a project that is under MIC, IT.
Yeah.
So specifically, you had a question on that particular.
Yeah, who directly, is it that you directly supervise, or would MIC have a project unit that directly supervises the contractor?
That's correct. MIC has its own project unit alongside most of our institutions. They have their internal project unit that is staffed with the relevant personnel, and they undertake the projects from conception straight through to rollout and closeout. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a culture of delayed completion of projects under these tertiary institutions? And if there is, what is your role in correcting it?
The institutions are generally they perform well in terms of they have good structure and organization, so things tend to flow quite smoothly there. As I mentioned earlier, very often the issue is really a matter of the monies being available on time. Yes, they have had issues with their procurement this year and that kind of thing, but generally it's normally about financing and timely financing of the projects. Yes, they incur, like every other project, there are things that will pop up during its execution, but we try to assist them where possible. If it's issues that we as the ministry could assist in terms of liaising with other government ministries, whatever we can do from our end, we would assist. But so generally, I would say that they perform quite well. They have good structure and they are well organized.
Yeah. You know, when you say that there's a problem with the releases of funds, you know, people tend to get the idea that it is where the funds come from, the Ministry of Finance, that is often late in disbursing these funds so that people get paid. But there is an entire process. And when you dig deeply into the process, usually it is the certificates from the project, processing through MSC, through the ministry, and then going towards the... And I'm asking this question because, you know, there was recently a very viral video of open forum in Guyana where the main topic was the delay in the projects and their completions. And I'm also asking it in relation to perhaps not the tertiary education, the tertiary schools, but the primary and the secondary schools. And often you have, at the beginning of a school term, people protesting. So I'm trying to determine, you know, how well is it working between yourselves and MTS, with the EFPDD, and with the projects unit, with yourselves and all of these other tertiary institutions, and how well are you managing it to ensure that, you know, quality education and a quality experience for our students is experienced?
Okay, so yes, sometimes there are protests, but these are normally when issues might be identified at a school. So in this instance, I mean, I can give an example. I think at the beginning of this term, it was Mount Hope Secondary. At Mount Hope Secondary, yes, there was the issue of the, it's an aging plant, it's an old school plant. It was part of our planned works under the vacation repair program, the works to be done. As soon as school started, we had received funding, I think in July and August. So when school starts, we were ready to start the works. The school, as mentioned previously, we focused on the works that could get the priority classes out, the 4s and 5s, these were extensive works at Mount Hope. There were electrical, plumbing, roof, toilets, yeah, desilting of drains because there was a little flooding issue as well. So we got those works. We focused on the priority areas so that the school can be opened. We collaborated with OSH. We have stakeholders in OSH, the regional corporations. We partnered with those persons. Well, of course, MTS, who would have recruited the contractor, procured the contractor. We did the works to ensure that the classes can be out because that's the main focus. We got the 4s and 5s out, and then I think that while works were being done, we got the other classes out as soon as these were completed. So we got classes out in about, what, 2 weeks? In about 2 to 3 weeks, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the working relationship with,
Yeah.
with MTS is a good one.
Mhm.
And there aren't any inordinate delays experienced in the completion of works.
As PS may have indicated, one of the challenges we face is when works are being implemented, a lot of times the schools are running, so sometimes the work will have to continue on evenings and weekends. That in itself results in a delay. Most of the time, that is what sort of stagnates the timely completion of the project.
All right. I don't think I accept that. I don't think I accept that because you have lighting systems within the school or lighting towers and so on that you can bring, and you work in the other hours apart from the school hours. You just complete the works. But all right, okay.
Thank you, Chair. Continuing along the same vein, could you, and maybe it's more for you can explain this, the issues of, when I look through either the repair program or the development program, one word appears quite often, upgrade. The word upgrade. Can you identify the issues with trying to upgrade on an aged plant? On an aged plant. And I suspect this is kind of where some of your things coming from, if you could, please.
Yeah, I'm giving thought to the question. As PS would have indicated earlier, almost over 50% of our plant is aged. It means plant has passed its design life. And
just to be clear, aged meaning past its design life. Okay, so it's not a year. It's specific to each building.
Building, that's right. It therefore means that particular building infrastructure is supposed to really be replaced. So ideally, we try to maintain that. That in itself is a challenge. Right? So we have secondary schools where the sewer system is 30, 40 years. The sewer system has never been changed. Quite recently, I think it's Manzelina, we had to go in and really desilt a sewer system that is 30, 40 years. We have electrical systems in secondary schools where the high voltage has never been changed, and that's a couple $1 million. Those are the kind of things that we are faced with. And we have about 125 secondary schools, and I think a large percentage of them has passed the design life. So we try to, to improve the infrastructure continuously and do upgrades with respect to what is required.
What does upgrade mean?
What does the word upgrade mean?
Yeah.
Okay, upgrade means
we're trying to understand. It's past the design life.
So,
what does upgrade mean in that context?
So we're upgrading the sewer system. It means we're putting in a new aerobic treatment, plant. We're upgrading the electrical. We're changing the actual high voltage cabling, as the case might be. We're upgrading the internal electrics, which means we're rewiring the school. We're changing the bulbs. We're putting LED bulbs. That's what we mean, what's meant by upgrade.
But so the design life really pertains to the support infrastructure of the building and not necessarily the building itself.
It refers to the actual age of the building. Physical plant, yes.
Let me tell you, there's an issue in understanding how do you upgrade something that is beyond its design life. In other words, so if its design life pertains to the support infrastructure, that would be electrical, sewer, air conditioning, that kind of thing. What about the building itself?
You're talking about the actual retrofitting.
Well, the structure.
Yeah, so at instances, we would normally do some retrofitting, which will entail some schools had spalling. I think Toko Secondary some years ago, we had to literally demolish the school because it suffered from extensive spalling. Mount Open itself too, the railings were shaking. We had some spalling, reinforcement was showing. So we would have done some retrofitting, some re-strengthening. That's part of the whole upgrade.
So you can upgrade a building back to reasonable, to prolong use of life, based on the work that you're doing, to a building that is beyond its original useful life? Is that?
Ideally, yes, but there are costs.
I don't understand it's costly, but that is what, in a lot of instances, that is what you are trying to do.
More or less, yes.
Members.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. Just to get some clarity. So within your unit, Mr. Cupid, you have the requisite expertise to treat with the structural, because you spoke to the building beyond its design life, and you spoke about the ancillary services, your electrical and your plumbing and so on. And Member Walker spoke to the structure. Do you have within your unit the requisite expertise to treat with whether the building is beyond its design life structurally?
So what normally pertains with respect to something like that, yes, we normally refer to the Ministry of Works. Our engineers will go out, they do a preliminary assessment, they realize, listen, this issue seems significant, it's severe, it can result in loss of life. We would normally contact Ministry of Works Design Branch, they will come and do an assessment, and that assessment will advise us on respect to the way forward. Okay.
Yes, you're between a rock and a hard place with this, please. So, but I just, Chair, just to close this, I've got one more question from the public, and it deals with just something we were dealing with prior, pest infestations, which is something we've seen a few of events. And the question really specific, from reporting to the initiation of pest control measures, what is the average time frame where that is? And what would cause a situation where a school has to be closed due to pest infestation and so on? How does this work?
So recently, I mean, we can give examples because these are real life examples for us. We had, I think it was a rat infestation at Gasparilla Secondary. When it was discovered, it was reported to us. We immediately had the regional corporation. There's a baiting unit. They go in to bait the school. We contacted MTS to ensure that the bins are cleared and put out, and there's no garbage remaining on the school compound overnight. We ensure that MTS. So this is the groundsman side of it as well. So not just the security. They ensure that the grounds were cleared as well to mitigate the risk of the pest. We liaised with the regional corporation again, with the public health inspection unit. So at the end, they would have come and done an inspection, and they would have cleared the school. We also had to liaise with OSH because there was a refusal to work at that time. We got the OSH as well. Once we had done the works, we got them to certify that the school was ready for occupation again, and school resumed. This probably occurred maybe within a week or two, max. But I must say the problem sometimes is, I think on the outskirts of the school, there's the rat problem, and it infiltrates. Yeah.
Yes, Member Islam.
Thanks, Madam Chair. As we treat with the infrastructural challenges, I know it may be difficult on agent plans, but what is your preventative maintenance processes like?
We generally undertake works. We have two sets of works. We undertake works through emergency, something pop up and we tend it, and then we have what we call our planned works. The planned works in itself should represent our maintenance plan. So we develop, because of the enormity of this thing, we then look at prioritizing. We have 700 schools, 125 secondary schools. Our secondary school is between 10 to 20 acres. It's a huge plant. So we normally look at prioritizing. We develop a list of items or issues that we want to undertake during the vacation, and that kind of informs us with respect to our maintenance plan.
So is it that do you have daily, weekly, monthly schedules for things that can assist in preventing or mitigating emergencies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we meet on a weekly basis. My team, we meet on a weekly basis, and they will report issues. These issues are correlated, and we put those issues together, and those issues will form part of our repair program. So we monitor projects continuously.
No, what I'm asking is, so you're saying that the planned works are the works that you do during the vacation period. But what I'm asking, are there works that can be done, as Member Mitchell spoke to, during school time that deals with preventative maintenance, so that you don't wait until it gets to the stage where you have to do major repairs? Because what I'm talking about is not not major repairs. What I'm speaking about is your day-to-day, weekly, monthly kind of schedule for maintenance, so that you pick up on stuff at an early stage so that it doesn't get to an emergency. So let's say, for instance, you're doing plumbing and you treat with cleaning the tanks or cleaning the pipes, so that you don't get to a situation where it becomes an emergency. And of those issues that you may be having, how many of those may be related to vandalism within the school system and outside and external?
Question with respect to the vandalism, I'll respond to that shortly. Most of what we do, we would, when the issues are reported, for example, sometimes like this week, we met with there was some sewer system that was giving some trouble. The sewer pump started making a little buzzing noise, as the case might be. So those things we do a request for scope and cost, because if we don't treat with it or we don't tend it, it will become an emergency. So we try to be proactive. Most of what we do are like that. Most of the emergencies that are reported, don't wait until it's shut down entirely, but sometimes we can detect things. The engineers over there, they are quite experienced and they know what to look for. We have an electrical panel, the breaker keeps tripping or it's getting hot. Those are indications that the panel has to be, restored, refurbished. So we look for things like that, we look for signals like that. Of course, it's enormous with 800 schools, and we try our best to keep on top of things. With respect to the issue of vandalism, that is something that we are faced with. It's a challenge for us. We try to sensitize the principals, as the case might be, who are the managers of the plant, with respect to issues. PS would have indicated earlier that right now we are redoing Aranguez. There was some measure of vandalism. Right now we are repairing the schools, and we try to talk to the principal and other stakeholders and get them involved so we can minimize the level of vandalism.
In terms of I don't like the terminology hotspots, but schools in communities. How do you factor in your work schedule in terms of challenges you may be having with miscreants or persons of shady characters? And and just to follow up from Member Michel, would you consider some of your works that are required being done after school hours?
Let me start with the last question first. Some of the works that are required to be done after school hours, for example, if you're doing over a roof, sometimes we need to do repairs to the roof. It's difficult for us to implement that while school is open, especially in a unionized environment with tutors, the case may be. We try to implement those works on evenings, on weekends. Sometimes we're treating a sewer system. We try to do that in the evenings and on the weekends. Sometimes it depends on the necessity of the work. Recently, the nature of the work, Recently we had to do St. George's, the sewer line was choked, the school would have been closed. We have to run in and do that as soon as possible. So it depends on, the nature of the work. Some works can be undertaken in the afternoon. Can't remember your second question, if you may just rephrase it.
The communities, the hotspots.
Yeah. One of the things we have done is the engineering assistants who are responsible for those particular areas, the success. I don't want to call any name, them over. They develop a nice relationship with the principals, so they try to be proactive. But it may seem ironic, to my mind, we have less complaints from those areas than other areas.
I just want to ask this last question, and then I think we could go on to the discussion with direct university services current. I don't think we have touched that. I just wanted to find out, and I think Mr. Henry, you might be the person. Sandy Grande Hype Center, has that been shelved completely? Because I know it was going to be approached in a different way. You don't build a building, Ministry of Youth Development and National Services, the program would be housed in their building. Their building has to be delayed. What is happening with that service? Because as you all have said, is to provide an environment that is conducive to teaching and learning, as well as improve the support for the delivery of the program. What's happening with that?
Okay, so the Sandy Grande Hype Center, well, initially it was supposed to be a new facility that MIC wanted to construct, and then subsequent to that there was discussions with the Ministry of Youth and Development and National Service to utilize a space that they were planning to construct in the Sandy Grande area. And as such, MIC will just move in and be accommodated in there. That project, the latest information we have here is that the project is, well, we don't have any indication the project is not going to be proceeded with. As such, funding this year was really allocated to the purchase of furniture and equipment to fit out a space. We are waiting on MIC to confirm what is the arrangements for the project and if it's going to actually get off the ground and probably get to a state where we can utilize the funding for that use this year. But at this point, we don't have information indicating that it's no longer on the books again.
Okay. All right. So we want to look at the direct university services current. In terms of this, how is the, first I'd like to know how is the allocation, right, distributed, if there's a formula for it to be distributed amongst the various campuses, how is that determined?
Right. So this particular sub-item relates to the funding that is a contribution made by all of the governments of the university campuses. What happens is that each of the member countries, they have established a technical advisory committee that prepares a budget for the university in that particular country. Subsequent to that, their budget is actually submitted to there's something called a committee called a university campus committee that sits. And they agree to whatever recommendations is made to be submitted to the university grants committee, which is the committee that sees about all of the operations of the entire University of the West Indies. Based on the decisions that comes out of that, that committee decides on how much funding is to be contributed by each member country towards each of these campuses. Mm-hmm. When that is decided, whatever is allocated for the Trinidad and Tobago government is taken to cabinet and it is approved. Specifically, each campus is actually identified and the funding is identified for each campus on an annual basis to be allocated in the draft estimates of the government of Trinidad and Tobago.
And how have the releases compared with the allocation?
They get exactly what cabinet approves.
Okay. Now, I see that the funds are utilized to cover staff, repairs, and maintenance costs, operating expenses, utilities, departments, and supplies. So we've seen recently protests at the, well, I don't know if you to call it protests, but some activity amongst the staff at UE, St. Augustine, with respect to salaries and so on. Would this payment that we make cover that level of staff?
So it's, as I said again, it's a contribution. So partially, each government is supposed to contribute towards the economic costs or the operating cost of each campus. This is part of the contribution which goes towards these costing that are listed here, the expenditure listed here. The rest depends on what the university can raise as their own generate as their own revenue. So yes, it will impact. If there is an increase in the salaries of the staff, members of staff in each university, it will impact on the contributions from each government.
Member Bacchus.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. So the recommendation from the committee that identifies the required contribution from the member states that goes to Cabinet is simply a recommendation from that committee for the consideration of Cabinet. Right, so because I don't think the committee could order the Cabinet to do what it wants, right? So it's a recommendation.
Yes, and our representative for the country, whoever is representing Trinidad and Tobago, is our member who will take that recommendation or approved recommendation by that committee to our Cabinet to get it approved.
The Cabinet will consider it and then make some level of contribution based on its own deliberations. So in other words, what I'm saying is that there's not necessarily an alignment between what the committee is asking for and what is approved.
At that level, I will not be able to say what deliberation takes place, but the ministry provides funding based on only what Cabinet has approved.
All right, let me ask it a different way. Is it that the recommendation that is being put forward for consideration has always been met by what was being allocated by Cabinet?
From my knowledge and the source documentation, no, there is always some level of probably negotiations subsequently, but we do provide the funding that is approved.
So once it's approved, they get whatever is approved?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Chair, I just wanted to make sure that there was an understanding as it stood based on what I heard. This is what I'm trying to get out of it. That there is a recommendation and then there's an approved number. And those two numbers don't necessarily have to be the same. All right.
And I guess it may not be a question for you all. Has there been instances where, because the country approves what they pay, and the basis is that the university finds the difference? What happens where the university does not find the difference to meet its operating expenses? Is it that then they come back to governments to make good that shortfall? Have you all experienced that?
Yes, it has happened in the past. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to move to the IDF under social infrastructure, education, pre-primary. I have a question, and this question is put to me by a number of people across the country. These ECCE centers, I believe there are a number that are unfinished. I think I was recently asked about one in the Marabella area. There may be one in the Chaguanas, and it may be across the country. What is the reason that they are unfinished? I don't know. Perhaps there's some infrastructural reason why they can't be finished. And if it is a case of funds, what is the plan to ensure that these unfinished ECCE centers are maintained with respect to the bush and people stealing all the electrical and all of those things, and whether there's a plan to complete them sometime in the future?
So almost all of those projects would have been undertaken through
EFCL.
Most of those projects, or some of them, we would have started and completed. I think, what I feel is just off the top of my head, there are a couple of them that we would have started and we would have received funding. There's a proposal currently that we would have submitted in respect to the CAF that has identified, I think, about 20 odd ECC schools to move forward once the allocation is available.
How many are presently unfinished and in that state of?
We'll have to provide that data for you subsequently.
Okay. And you said there is a proposal in place to complete them with the assistance of a CAF loan. Yeah. When do you think those 20 odd students, sorry, did you say 20?
Yeah, it's about.
Yeah. When do you think that those will be completed? In what year?
Yeah. I am not in a position to say. I know we are still negotiating with CAF.
Okay, so they're in several stages of
they're all
completion.
in stages of completion, yes.
Okay. And what does your unit, the EFPPD, do with respect to maintaining it from vermin and vines and squatters and that sort of thing?
The allocation that we receive speaks with respect to schools that are occupied.
Yes.
So we focus on those because our
On the
current allocation does not cater for those schools that are incomplete.
Okay. So it's not under your responsibility? All of these assets are not under your responsibility? Are they still under the EFCL or?
So EFCL is no longer with us. MTS is our project managers now.
Yeah, EFCL is being wound up. I'm just trying to figure out where do these assets now lie and who is responsible for these assets. So, for example, some homeless person or some molester or somebody starts to reside in these places. There are vines, there are snakes, and are those maintenance issues the responsibility of the Ministry of Education, or have you been in discussions with the local authority to perhaps, or CPEP, to cut and clean and maintain these places?
Right, so these schools are, well, unfinished, as you said, and in various stages of completion. They're also in various stages of disrepair or vandalized. In some cases, we have security at the sites.
Yes.
And those would be the better maintained ones.
Yeah.
The EFCL is, the dissolution of the EFCL is under the Ministry of Finance. We can, perhaps have, as you mentioned, have CPEP or any of the regional corporations partner with them to assist in clearing some of the schools and maintaining them so that they don't go into further disrepair.
Yeah.
However, as mentioned previously, we are in discussion with the Ministry of Finance because, as mentioned previously, these schools cannot fall within our current allocation due to budgetary limitations. Yeah. So we are in negotiation with the Ministry of Finance to have a CAF loan provided to help us to assist to complete some of these schools.
Yeah, and I'm asking because I saw a video, I think it became viral yesterday. Somebody known to me, and I guess well known to all of us, was openly vandalizing and taking all the galvanized and so on off of some government property. So, the idea of securing these spaces, that is important, so that the final cost isn't too much away or larger than what the original estimate is. Yes. So it's good that you have security. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so P.S., just to follow up on the discussion, in the submission where we have Appendix 21, and that spoke about completion of unfinished schools. It wasn't just the ECCEs managed by the Educational Facilities Company Limited. With those unfinished schools, well, let me ask, how many unfinished schools fall into this category currently? And you had spoken in that about novation agreements being entered with MTS to complete some of those. If we could get, and it might be possible today, but if we could get a sort of breakdown, so we'll know the numbers that fall within each of these categories explained here. And also in respect to what kinds, because you also make the statement that liabilities will remain with each company. I don't know if it will be with you or with the Ministry of Finance in terms of liabilities of EFCL versus liabilities of the Ministry of Education under these unfinished schools as they currently exist. Okay. Anyone else with any other questions?
Just quickly, what's the status of the UTT campus?
Which one?
In Tobago.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm seeing it on the,
Right.
yeah,
So,
J013.
right. So, well, we still have a few, we had two projects under that vote in fiscal 2023, rolled over into 2024. It was just the purchase of multimedia equipment to facilitate a sort of a distance ed program in that lectures could be provided to students in Tobago from facilities or lectures that will be going on in Trinidad. I know UTT is in conversations now with MIC, I believe, to possibly utilize similar facilities. Right now we don't have any projects on the books right now for that campus. There was I think there was some signage or something we were going to put up outside the existing campus, but in terms of any more involved infrastructure, heavier projects, it's sort of on a hold because of those discussions that are ongoing with MIC with respect to using one facility for dual purpose. So there hasn't been a lot under the DP within recent at that particular facility.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks much.
And maybe Mr. Henry, you could tell us about J017, the establishment of Skills and Technology Center in DB Pinal, which seems to be a very modest allocation, but only 1% actual completion.
1%, okay.
Well, I mean, hopefully it's moved since then.
Yeah, so under J017, in the last financial year, we purchased with supply and installation of fume extractors for their welding workshops. That project was awarded in March of this year.
Mm-hmm.
It is currently ongoing. We've done some payments already, and it's supposed to be completed in this fiscal. So that is going on, and in addition, in this financial year, we are also upgrading some recreational space on the western side of the campus and upgrading the plumbing infrastructure at that facility.
Right.
So those are the three things that are on board for this financial year.
And you have any kind of target dates? I know you tell me this fiscal, but this fiscal have plenty months to run.
Okay, well, the fume extractors are probably like 75% completed, so probably within the quarter at latest January, we'll finish that. The others, I mean, MIC have targeted to complete those projects before the end of the fiscal. So I would want to just at this point, because they're still in the tender phase, I wouldn't want to say anything before the end of which will be September of next year, but perhaps it may be sooner.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Member Islam.
Just quickly on the NESE Skills and Technology Center in Tobago.
Yes.
You had purchase of welding units was awarded to FT Farfan.
Yes.
The estimated delivery day was May 31st, 2024.
So we had welding.
Delivered?
Maybe that would have been an error. All the projects that we undertook at that facility with NESC in the last financial year were completed. So maybe that may have been an error. The welding workshop upgrade and the purchase of furniture and equipment for the welding workshop, both of those projects were completed.
So the welding units were delivered?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so, all right. So you're saying it could be an error?
Well, I don't know, maybe in that document.
No, I'm asking. This document said the
it was probably estimated at the time, but I know the projects were completed within.
Right, so it has been, okay.
Yes.
Okay. And while we have you, Mr. Holder, J061, which is the analysis of low academic performance of students. You know, I expect progress may have been made on that between the time of the submission and now.
I
Hopefully it was completed in last fiscal.
I do not, that project is not yet complete. I think it's actually spanning over multiple financial years. Just give me a second, Pierce. So far, a committee has been established. NEHIST is the lead on this project, but they are working in collaboration with the ministry. A committee has been established, and they have gotten on with some of their work. They have hired a research person. The project is ongoing, but certainly it was not envisaged that it would have been completed in 2024. I don't have an update in terms of when it will be completed, but I can certainly get a more solid timeline subsequently. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay. So if there are no further questions, I would like to thank the Ministry of Education for this conversation, which has helped enlighten us. There are a couple of things we've asked to be submitted in writing, and the Secretariat, Madam Pierce, will follow up with that. So I really want to thank you, Madam Pierce, and your supporting staff, Mr. Henry, Mrs. Henry David, Ms. Gachada, Mr. McLeod, Mr. Cupid, Ms. Manick, Ms. Gachada, Webb, Ms. Henry. Oh, there are plenty of Henrys here, boy. And Ms. Samaru. I now realize there's about 3-4 Henrys here. I want to thank you all very much for this conversation. And I want to thank the members of the listening public and the media who've stayed with us during this conversation. I wish you all a pleasant evening and a safe journey home. I now suspend this part of the meeting. Thank you very much.